For the second year in a row, CJ Stroud was invited to the Heisman Trophy Ceremony. And just like last season, CJ Stroud walked away from said ceremony without hardware in his hands. And honestly, that might be the motivation he needs to play the game of his life against the Georgia Bulldogs in the Peach Bowl.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes for the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Monday, December 12th in the year 2022, and today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. During today's episode, we will talk about that motivating factor CJ Stroud might have under his belt inside of him after not winning the Heisman this past weekend. And we will discuss a recent promotion Ryan Day gave a coach on the Ohio State coaching staff. But before we get to any of that, this past Saturday evening was the Heisman Trophy Ceremony in New York City. With all of the previous Heisman, or most of the previous Heisman Trophy winners there in attendance, you also had Caleb Williams, Max Duggan, CJ Stroud, and Stetson Bennett. The four finalists for said award, they were there as well. And we kind of talked about it on Friday's show of last week, myself and Jeff Hunt. We were both on the same side that Stroud would not win this award, that the award would go to Caleb Williams, quarterback at USC. That's exactly how things went down on Saturday evening. Stroud was third in Heisman voting. Caleb Williams was in first place. The other people that were, Max Duggan was in second place. Stetson Bennett was in fourth place. And it was a sizable gap between number 2 and number 3. The gap between Stroud and Bennett was not as large as the gap between Duggan and Stroud. Honestly, I was kind of surprised at how close the voting was between Stroud and Bennett. Caleb Williams, total points, 2,031 points that he got in Heisman voting. Max Duggan had 1,420. CJ Stroud had 539. And then Stetson Bennett had 349 points in the voting. First place votes were even closer for Stroud and Stetson Bennett. Stroud had 37 first place votes. Stetson Bennett had 36. Once again, I make this statement all the time. I'll make it again when it comes to the Heisman Trophy voting. Make it make sense. The other players that got votes in this award, Hendon Hooker was in 5th place. Bryce Young, Blake Corum, Michael Penix Jr., Bijan Robinson, and Drake May round out the top 10 in the Heisman Trophy voting. I don't think it's any surprise that Stroud did not win the award. In the biggest games of the year, Penn State, he rose to the occasion, has the big plays in the fourth quarter. Notre Dame, that he had some big plays in the beginning of the season, but no one really counted those as a Heisman-worthy type of moment. Also, when you think about the end of the season, the final 2 games, Maryland and even the team up north, when he can really cement himself. Even after the Northwestern game, he was still the betting favorite. And some people use that to say who's going to win the award, to win that award. So he was still up in the running after that. Ultimately, a weird, odd game against Maryland, a weird, odd game against the team up north. The stats may look good, but the eyeballs of many say Stroud did not have a good game against the Michigan Wolverines. I think that's what caused him to fall in the Heisman Trophy voting. Also, Max Duggan, TCU quarterback, had a phenomenal year, undefeated. That had some weight. And then, honestly, Caleb Williams was phenomenal this year. But I think one of the best things about the award of the weekend for CJ Stroud, outside of his suit that he wore, the three-piece suit, that boy was clean. He had the 7 chain that was just shining and making everybody's eyes be fixated on it as soon as they saw the necklace around his neck. One of the best things about this weekend for CJ Stroud was that he represented Ohio State very well. He represented himself and his family very well. And I didn't see any negative conversation in regards to CJ Stroud, how he carried himself, how he did anything, the things he wore. Nobody complained about anything with CJ Stroud this past weekend. And I do believe that's what you want in your QB1. No matter if it's Ohio State, no matter if you're a Browns fan, no matter if you're a Bengals fan, no matter whatever fan you are, Cavaliers, you want people on the team, especially leaders, that will represent your university or your franchise or the organization very well. And CJ Stroud did that over the weekend. Hey, his season wasn't one that was the best we've ever seen at Ohio State or in the running for the best we've ever seen in the college football to where he was snubbed. No, there were mishaps. There were some bad plays. There were some confusing plays. So it may not be a surprise for anybody. It may not have been a surprise for CJ Stroud. And he could have carried himself in any way that he wanted to. Man, I'm in a playoff. Man, my coach is here. I got my dog back in Columbus. They're working. Man, we good. Don't nobody care about how I carry myself. We are Ohio State. The Ohio State. We're just different. So no. He cares about about the university. He cares about his team. He cares about how he carries himself. And he did that in a great way over the weekend. Also, hats off to Caleb Williams. Think about this. Last year, the Oklahoma fans were chanting, "We want Caleb. We want Caleb," to bench Spencer Rattler. Caleb Williams comes in, does phenomenal things. I believe he led Oklahoma in a major comeback to beat Texas last year in Red River. Ultimately, his coach goes to Southern Cal at USC in LA. Caleb Williams says, "Yeah, I'm going to follow you over there and let's do some big things." Doesn't win the Pac-12 championship. They don't make a trip to the playoff. Ohio State fans are happy about that. But Caleb Williams is phenomenal. Hats off to him for winning the award in his first year at a university after transferring from one university to the next. Hats off to him. And also, hats off to CJ Stroud for the way that he carried himself at the Heisman Trophy Ceremony. Now, losing the award itself might confuse some and say, "Jay, it's the end of the world," or "Jay, it's not a good look," or whatever you want. But ultimately, this could be a great motivating factor for CJ Stroud in the next game that he plays. How can he motivate himself? We'll discuss that next right here on Locked On Buckeyes. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's fast, quick, and easy, and even free to create a job post on LinkedIn Jobs. Once your job post is created, add the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you could quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your fine podcast. Motivation is something everybody's looking for during crucial moments, no matter what career you're in, no matter what you're doing in life. People are looking for ways to motivate themselves to do certain things in life. For some people in the culture we live in, they're looking for motivation to lose some weight, to follow the diet culture. Whatever you think about that, the people out there that want to motivate themselves to do that, want to motivate themselves to move from one city to the next, to motivate themselves to get a 4.0 GPA, want to motivate themselves, whatever it is. People are looking for ways to motivate themselves in different things that they do in life. And ultimately, I do believe CJ Stroud is a person that can find motivation in the way the voting went this past weekend. They might want to say, Jay, how can you find motivation in voting? Well, I mentioned it to you recently about how close and how abnormally close those first place votes were between Stetson Bennett and CJ Stroud. Stroud first place votes, he had 37 first place votes. Stetson Bennett had 36. Now, Stroud had more second and third place votes than Stetson Bennett, but it's that first place vote one that might seem odd to me. And I guarantee when Stroud saw the final tallying of the votes and who got first, second, and third place votes in order, it might startle him too. Because just because Stetson Bennett plays on Georgia, he's going to get some certain eyeballs. He plays in the Southeastern Conference. There are going to be a lot more eyeballs because of that. Plays for the defending national champion. That's going to get a lot more eyeballs. But Stroud's at Ohio State. Stroud was a better quarterback last year, and I still think Stroud was a better quarterback this year. I firmly think Stroud is a better quarterback. But why in the world was it that way? Well, Stroud finished third in voting behind Williams and Duggan in every region except the South, in which Stroud finished fourth behind Georgia quarterback Stetson Bennett, who finished fourth in every other region except the Midwest, in which he finished sixth. Now, I think regional bias is real. I think there are people in the Midwest that because he plays in the Southeast, Stetson Bennett, they're going to say, oh, they're going to lift him up. Also, someone going to say, well, Stroud, he's in the Midwest. We watch him play more. We're going to lift him up even more than Stetson Bennett. I do believe regional bias is real. But for the one region that Stroud finished third in voting, did not finish third in voting in, was the South. I think he's going to have a little added motivation, not just because of that voting and the Southern people thinking Stetson Bennett had a better season than him, but let's think about this. Georgia's in the South. I mentioned that already, playing the Southeastern Conference. Most people, that's also in the South. But how about this one? The Peach Bowl's in the South. In the state that Georgia is in, Georgia plays it. The Georgia Bulldogs play in Athens. The Peach Bowl's going to be played in Atlanta, Georgia. Athens, Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, not that far away from each other. So you think about all of these things here. CJ Stroud, when last year it was clear, he listened to people. He heard people. He heard the talking heads, which I am one. He probably read some things that were in articles, and he responded to some of those things in press conferences or maybe even in tweets. Those things he responded in. And so you know that about Stroud. I think Stroud's a more mature person right now. I think we see that in the way he carries himself. But also, he's trying to find a way, and it might come from the media and voting for the Heisman, where he can say, y'all did this, and this, and y'all didn't make no sense to it. So here's what I'm going to show you on the field in your own area why y'all are wrong. And I do think Stroud needs that. Because I think if Stroud just relied on the things that he relied on himself previously to motivate himself or to be a better player or whatever the case may be, from this past season, I think you can see the same result we saw against a team up north because Georgia is a really, really, really good football team. I'm not going to buy into the narrative that Georgia's pass defense is bad. We'll talk about that later on, maybe throughout, maybe later in this week or maybe next week or something like that. I'm not going to buy into that narrative that Georgia has a pass defense is as bad as what people think. I'm not going to do that. What I would say is this. That's a really good team. My estimation, the best team in the sport right now this season. That should motivate Stroud enough. But if he can find that extra motivation in something like this, baby, it's good. It's good, it's gravy, and it's what is needed. I remember playing high school football. And in the offseason, during our 2-week prep of 2-a-days prior to the first week of the season, we would have to run sprints at the end of practice. And let me tell y'all, our practice field, started off as grass, but it quickly turned into just dirt because, well, maintenance man, you can only do so much to a practice field that's grass to keep it grass, unless you want to put thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, which a lot of high schools at that time they were not going to do. My high school was one of them. So they said, hey, grass practice field, y'all going to be out here every day. It's the deadest. It's hot. I mean, hot, y'all. It was the 80, 90 degrees during the second 2-a-day practice. Yeah, that ground, even if you water it, it might not be as much grass as you would like. But I remember running these sprints, and we would run 10 sprints, generally about 10 40s, down, back, all count up to 10. And then the last one, let's do one for LN. Our rivals, Lawrence North High School. Some of you might recognize that school. It's the same school that Greg Oden and Mike Conley played their high school basketball at. Let's do one for LN. And so we had to go ahead and do our extra sprint for LN. And you know what? There were a lot of guys in the first 10 that we did. They didn't want to run hard. They didn't want to go all out. They didn't want to go the extra mile and burn themselves. They didn't want to do that. But as soon as you mention the rival school of our school, as soon as you mention the team that you played week 1, the team that's working hard, the team that you're supposed to dominate and beat, as soon as that team comes up, everybody goes harder in the paint. Boys out there sprinting, going as hard as they could, trying huffing and puffing. As the coach said, bring it in. You're huffing and puffing. Some dudes just they get a helmet off, and I'm tired, y'all. Where the water at? Because you go hard for LN. The extra motivation when you're trying to do one extra rep to prepare for the biggest game of the year, that's going to be harder for you because you say, hey, I may slack the first 10, but I ain't going to slack number 11 when it's helping me to prepare for the biggest game of the season. And ultimately, Stroud, he went hard in the first 12 games. He wasn't perfect, but he was clearly QB1, and he was clearly a guy struggled some. He played phenomenal. Think about how many guys in college football throw 3,000 yards in a season, in 12 games. I'm saying a season because you can add 13, 14, 15 games to inflate that number. Think about how many guys throw 3,000 passing yards in 12 games of football. No, man, it's a lot, but it's hard. It's harder than you think. But Stroud had all the motivation. But just like how people in my high school, when you said one more for LN, everybody went out there and went hard in the paint. I think Stroud could use his Heisman Trophy voting and use it as extra motivation to play even harder and even better football than he has ever played in his life when he steps on the field in Atlanta, Georgia, in the Peach Bowl against the Georgia Bulldogs. The game against Georgia will feature Kevin Wilson, who recently recently took the head coaching job at Tulsa, which left an open spot on the coaching staff for someone to tackle. It's a tight ends coach. OC has not been handled just yet, but the job for the Ohio State tight ends coach was vacant. It's not vacant anymore. Ryan A. promoted from within. We'll discuss who he promoted, why he promoted them next, right here on Locked on Buckeyes. At Locked on Buckeyes, we believe home should be where you and your family feel safest, especially over the holidays. This season, give yourself and your family the gift of peace and protection with the number one rated home security system, Simply Safe. And right now, Simply Safe is offering Locked On Buckeyes listeners 40% off a new security system. But don't put this off, and here's why I love it. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real, so you can get higher priority police response. Simply Safe is home security with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door. With the top-rated Simply Safe app, stay in complete control of your system. Arm or disarm, unlock for a guest, access your cameras, or adjust system settings anytime, anywhere. Don't miss your chance to save big on my favorite security system. Get 40% off any new system at simplysafe.com/lockedoncollege today. That's simplysafe.com/lockedoncollege. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Promoting from within. That was something that many people that around the Ohio State program believed Ryan Day would do when it was announced that Kevin Wilson was going to take the head coaching job at Tulsa. But promoting from within was the thought, but nobody was concrete or 100% sure that was going to be the move. Because at a school like Ohio State, sometimes you might have guys that are candidates on the inside, but there might be a better candidate on the outside of the program. And ultimately, you might say, how about I go elsewhere to fill this role? The guys I have here, they're good, but there's a better candidate somewhere else. And ultimately, that's kind of how I viewed this potential hiring or promotion of anybody at Ohio State's program. Would it be a hire from within, or would it be a hire from without? Ultimately, Ryan decided to promote former quality control coach and former senior advisor to the head coach, Keenan Bailey, to tight ends coach. Now, the OC, which Kevin Wilson had the title of that as well, that has not been filled yet. We'll discuss more about that and my thoughts about the offensive coordinator role on tomorrow's show. But Keenan Bailey was somebody. And I do every now and then I try to check out Zach Smith's podcast, Minister Sports, and he was high, extremely high on Keenan Bailey. And this was even before Kevin Wilson, it was announced that Kevin Wilson had the job as Tulsa's head coach. When it came out that Brian Hartline was going to interview for the Cincinnati job, that's the first time I had heard. Now, I won't say the first time. That's the first time, most recent time it stuck out to me that Keenan Bailey could get promoted to tight ends coach, and there could be some reshuffling around tight ends coach or receivers coach, whatever it may be. He was saying Keenan Bailey could get promoted because he has been someone that Ohio State has kept around. He's worked hard. He's been perfect with Ohio State. Ohio State has done some things to keep him when other schools wanted to come in and take him away. Ohio State said, no. And he has been there for quite a long time. He has also been someone who has been very key on the recruiting trail. And there are a lot of recruits out there that say, thanks, Coach Key. Well, that's Keenan Bailey. Because Keenan Bailey, a lot of times, he'll be out there on the recruiting trail. He'll be out there. If a coach can't go, Keenan Bailey goes. And so he has been someone that's been very, very pivotal and vital to possibly getting some of your favorite Buckeye players to Ohio State. Keenan Bailey has been on the Ohio State staff since 2016. And so it's not like he was just a Ryan Day guy. Another guy who Ryan Day kept from Urban Meyer's tenure. Kevin Wilson was one of them. Keenan Bailey was as well, more in a support staff role. But if you're doing great there, why should he go ahead and not keep you and bring somebody else in? Just things to think about. Well respected around the coach, around many coaches, the recruits, and also well respected by current players. Cade Stover said he worked with Keenan Bailey 3 or 4 nights a week during the summer to work on developing his pass catching skills. We see Cade Stover put those on display this season as a tight end. you don't really expect to catch that many balls or to catch the balls that he's caught this year. And that's a credit to the work that he's been putting in with Coach Keenan Bailey. And he saw that hard work pay off this year as he's been the most productive receiving tight end Ohio State has had since 2013. Here's a direct quote from Cade Stover about Keenan Bailey. Quote, Keenan is probably the best held secret in this whole entire place. I love talking to that dude. He helps me so much, and he's just a very, very smart mind with football, end quote. Coach Keenan Bailey, that's what he is. He's a coach. Got his start at Notre Dame. He was a Notre Dame alum. He was also on the Missouri coaching staff back in 2014 with his undergrad. He has been around for a while. And the fact that Ryan Day made this promotion from within is huge. Because Ryan Day could have done the same thing he did last year when it came to the defensive coaching staff. Ohio State has a new linebackers coach, a new D coordinator, a new safety coach, a new corner coach. He split the DB room in half. New coaches there. He could have done that and gone elsewhere and got somebody with more experience at the D1 level, coaching that position. But no. Decided to promote from within. I hope it works out. Slippery slope, not tricky. Can be tricky too. It's a slippery slope promoted from within because you never know what you're going to get sometimes. Sometimes the lights might be too bright. The spotlight might be on them too much, and ultimately it could backfire. I think Ryan Day knows something about Keenan Bailey, which is why he was going to get promoted at this time. Happy for him. Hats off. Everything I've read, he has been working hard for this promotion, and I'm glad he got it. Out of here on this Monday. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be still talking about the Peach Bowl, and I know y'all are itching to get on the NIL and more about the transfer portal. Hey, man, we'll be talking that and more about the Peach Bowl leading up to the game on New Year's Eve. You can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. You can send all of your emails to jstevens317@gmail.com. Thanks for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen today. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your fine podcasts.